Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Percy, and on behalf of everyone at MoveOn Civic Action and our partners, Indivisible, Working Families Power, Public Citizen, Win Without War, About Face, Veterans Against War, and People's Action, we are grateful you could join tonight's national call, Healthcare, Not Warfare. I want to start by naming who is most impacted right now. Millions of Venezuelans are living through deep uncertainty, fear, and instability. Families are trying to survive amid economic hardship and political turmoil, and now face the threat of increased violence and foreign intervention. And we also want to acknowledge the devastating shooting in Minnesota today and hold the victims, their loved ones, and the entire community in our thoughts as they grieve and seek healing. From the illegal intervention in Venezuela to the mass ICE agents destroying people's lives, it's all a part of the same story. At home and abroad, Trump is escalating violence in pursuit of authoritarianism at the expense of the rest of us. That's why we are here. Together, we can act to stop the regime and fight for the country and world we all deserve. Tonight, we want to be clear. The safety, dignity, and well being of the Venezuelan people must come first. We hope that they are safe, and we stand in solidarity with people who deserve peace and self determination, not escalation. Venezuela should be run by Venezuelans. U.S. taxpayers should not be forced to bankroll a costly occupation we never wanted and never voted for. Americans did not vote for another forever war. We need leaders who will lower the cost of living. Instead, Trump and his Republicans have already driven up ACA premiums. Groceries cost more money. Energy costs more money. Housing costs more money. And now, rather than addressing any of that, Trump is wasting time and resources on reckless military actions that only benefits his billionaire cronies and big oil. But we want healthcare, not warfare. Again, we want healthcare and not warfare. And MoveOn, we know the power of collective action. We helped build a massive anti war movement during the Iraq War. We organized to stop a war with Iran. We know that if we don't push back loudly and together, this administration will escalate violence in Venezuela and beyond. Congress got to step up, got to step in. Congress must rein in Trump's reckless and illegal use of military force and refocus on improving people's lives. So before we go any further, I know that we're all here together. Please drop in the chat and tell us where you're joining from tonight and why you are here. And know that we're stronger when we show up together. So take a moment right now in the chat just to introduce yourselves to some of your virtual neighbors. Now, this is important, and you're going to hear me say the following a lot tonight, okay? But we're not just here to talk, we're here to do something. And there are three things that you can do right now to make sure Congress hears you. First, you can fill out the form from Indivisible at indivisi.org/no war. That is indivisi.org/no war to get everything that you need to have in order to call your senator immediately. Second, use MoveOn's letter tool to send a quick note to your members of Congress. You can go to moveon.org/no war letter to do that. And third, we know that we have to amplify our impact. So share these links with at least three friends and help us grow this moment. We'll drop both of them in the chat throughout the night, both the indivisi.org/no war and the moveon.org/no war letter should be in your chat even as we speak. Tonight, we are going to be joined by an incredible group of leaders, organizers, and advocates who are standing up for healthcare, not warfare. We are going to hear from Senator Tim Kaine, who has been a consistent voice for Congress, reclaiming its institutional role and preventing unauthorized and endless wars. You'll also hear from movement leaders, including Carolina Jimenez Sandoval from the Washington Office on Latin America, Sam Ratner from Win Without War, really excited to hear from you, Brittany DeBarros from About Face Veterans Against War, and Nalini Stamp from Working Families Power, who will help ground us in the moment and what it means for communities, workers, and veterans. Um, we're grateful for all of them to be here tonight. And we will also hear from MoveOn's very own Sada Hagdusti from MoveOn, who is our chief of program, who will connect the dots between what's happening in Washington and the power that we are building together. We're grateful to all of them for being here tonight and for you for showing up. So let's get to work. We're grateful to welcome Carolina Jimenez Sandoval. Carolina is a Venezuelan human rights defender based in Washington, D.C., with more than 20 years of experience at advancing human rights and social justice across the Americas. They currently serve as president of the Washington Office on Latin America and previously held the role of deputy director for the Americas at Amnesty International, where they led advocacy efforts throughout the region. Welcome, Carolina, and thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me well. And well, as you said, my name is Carolina Jimenez Sandoval, and I am the president of the Washington Office on Latin America, WOLA. I am also a Venezuelan citizen living and working in Washington, D.C. I come from a country affected by a severe humanitarian emergency. 1 in every 3 Venezuelans is food insecure. The health system collapsed years ago, and 8 million people, a little over 25% of the population, fled the country in just over a decade. All of this happened in the context of a very repressive and authoritarian regime. Venezuela remains the only country in the Americas with an open investigation before the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Over 1,000 people are imprisoned due to political reasons, and grave human rights violations, such as enforced disappearances, arbitrary detentions, torture, sexual and gender violence, and extrajudicial killings, have been documented for years. But Venezuelans believe in democracy. Venezuelans overwhelmingly voted for a democratic change in July 2024, but their will was ignored by Nicolás Maduro, who unlawfully remained in power and launched an extensive campaign of repression. I, like many other human rights defenders, have been unable to return to my home country due to fear for my security. Defending human rights, working as a journalist, and simply dissenting can land you in jail. But despite all of this, the Maduro government's long-standing record of human rights violations does not justify a U.S. military intervention that breaches international law. This position has been expressed by the United Nations Fact-Finding Mission on Venezuela and other international human rights mechanisms. The most recent U.S. actions create a worrisome precedent for the Latin American region. The UN Secretary General, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and multiple governments worldwide have raised alarm about the actions of the Trump administration, which could further generate regional polarization and unrest. It is essential that efforts now focus on de-escalating tensions, protecting civilians, and producing a peaceful and a democratic transition. The Trump administration's return to gun-bow diplomacy and disregard for international law damages U.S. position and standing globally and alienate important allies. WOLA calls on the administration to end these unilateral actions and support a negotiation process centered on the rights of Venezuelans and on democracy. We believe the U.S. Congress should assert its oversight power over the executive branch to investigate the 32 unlawful boat strikes and at least 115 extrajudicial executions that have occurred since September 2025, as well as request extensive details about the administration's policy towards Venezuela for the coming months. Beyond supporting a world powers resolution on Venezuela, the No War in Mexico resolution, and others that may be introduced, members of Congress should forcefully speak up about the Venezuela's grave human rights situation and the need for the administration to support a democratic transition in Venezuela, led by Venezuelans and not U.S. economic interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for reminding us why this fight matters for families here at home and for communities abroad. Thank you for your leadership and your vision and standing up in this moment. And we're going to keep pushing for healthcare, not warfare. We're really going to land on that message. We're really glad to be joined tonight by Congressman Greg Casar. Many of you know Congressman Casar as a former labor organizer who's been a consistent voice for working people and an economy that works for families, not corporations. In Congress, he's helped lead the fight for workers' rights through the PRO Act, reproductive freedom through the Women's Health Protection Act, and healthcare as a basic right through Medicare for All. He's also focused on building strong union jobs in the clean energy economy, and he has delivered real results for Texans, securing millions in funding for veterans and seniors and everyday families. We are so grateful to have him back with us tonight. Please help me and welcome Congressman Greg Casar. Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Greg. Thank you for the really kind introduction. And look, my entire adult life, politicians have been starting wars for regime change and to make their corporate donors profits. They always promise that those military actions will be quick and swift and easy. And then we find out that for years and years and years, our men and women in uniform are put in harm's way. We use tons of our limited public dollars, just get sunk into these endless wars for oil. And I'm here to say, with one voice alongside you all, that we need healthcare, not warfare. I'm here to say clearly that we don't need any new wars. I mean, over the weekend, as we know, Donald Trump escalated his completely illegal war with Venezuela. We sent our brave men and women into harm's way. And now he says that he's going to, quote, run Venezuela. Then we find out today that he says he wants to take oil money from Venezuela and put it in an offshore account. So to get things straight, while Donald Trump, on the one hand, is cutting healthcare for millions of people, he's creating an offshore slush fund for himself. So we're here to say no more of that. And I want to say clearly to everyone on this call that your voice really matters. Calling your members of Congress matters. Organizing in your communities matters and makes a huge difference right now, because we cannot be stuck in a long-term war with Venezuela. We can't have invasions of Colombia or Greenland or all these other places that Donald Trump and his lackeys have now threatened to invade. Look, this is a moment for a massive peace movement like we have seen here in our recent history, because peace is actually what can bring us greater prosperity for everyday people, not just for oil companies. And peace is actually what will keep us safe. What Donald Trump is doing in South America is not keeping anyone safe. And unfortunately, I do not think it's going to provide peace or democracy for the people of Venezuela when Trump is clearly just focused on profits for oil companies and for his donors, and it isn't making us any safer. And so when millions of people speak up and say we will not allow Trump to take us into war, not in Venezuela or not anywhere else, that is really our only path, and we need everyone on this call. So thank you so much for having us, and I know you can do it.
Thank you so much, Congressman, both for your leadership and grounding us in what's at stake at this moment and reminding us that peace really should reign. We're grateful for this partnership around healthcare and not warfare. Thank you for all that you do and for the work that you're doing in the Congress right
And
now.
and Chris, one thing I forgot to highlight at the beginning, because I was just like really grateful and blushing from your kind introduction, is I'm also proud to lead the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And I mentioned that not about me, but that there are nearly 100 members of Congress in the Progressive Caucus that are really speaking out on this issue. And so if you see your member out there calling for a war powers vote, calling to stop these kinds of military actions, do give them a boost. Tell them thank you, and then let's get more and more members of Congress all across the country to do the same. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for reminding us. And let's talk about what you can do right now to make sure your voice is heard. First, I said it earlier, fill out the form from Indivisible at indivisi.org/no war to get every single solitary thing that you need to call your senators right now. Okay. Second, you can use MoveOn's letter tool to quickly send a note to your members of Congress. You heard the congressman just say to reach out to them. You can send a note right now by going to moveon.org/no war letter. And the third thing, because we want to amplify the voice that we have, share these links with at least 3 friends. Text them, email them, post them. Help us grow this moment. Okay? Every call, every message, every share counts. Together, we can make sure that Congress hears us loud and clear. We want healthcare, not warfare. In the chat, we say we want healthcare, not warfare. Joining us now is Sam Ratner. Sam is Policy Director at Win Without War, where he works for a more democratic, peaceful, and just U.S. foreign policy. Before joining Win Without War, he worked as an analyst with the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. Say that 3 times fast. A columnist on politics and security with the Public Radio Exchange and the Inkstick Media, and a freelance journalist. Oh, he has a resume. Good evening, Sam. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Welcome to the call.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. Hey, everyone. My name is Sam Ratner. I'm the Policy Director at Win Without War. And I just want to say I have so much gratitude for all of you who've shown up to take action in this vital, vital moment to support healthcare and not warfare. I'm going to talk about some of the rhetoric that we've heard about what this administration is up to in Venezuela and how we can respond, and about what this administration is actually up to in Venezuela and why it's so important that we take action to stop them. We've seen Trump's allies try to paint this coup as being about democracy and about drugs, but it's not about either of those things. We can start with the drug point. Donald Trump loves to say that attacking Venezuela is about ending the overdose crisis and getting drugs off our street, but we know that's not true. For starters, Venezuela simply is not an important site in the supply chain of the drugs fueling the overdose crisis in the US. Even if we accepted the nonsense war on drugs logic that violence against drug traffickers can curb drug use, it still wouldn't make any sense to have this kind of violent coup. And more to the point, if Donald Trump really cared about the overdose crisis, he wouldn't be working overtime to kick people off Medicaid and defund proven treatment programs. Now, the democracy argument can be stickier sometimes. We've seen major media outlets like the Post and the Times publish editorials saying, well, Maduro was repressive and corrupt, so him being removed from power must be good. And as you heard from Carolina, people have very legitimate grievances against Nicolas Maduro. We don't have to waste our breath telling them he's some kind of great guy. But we do need to say loud and clear the obvious response, that this attack, this violent coup, is not a win for democracy. Democratic progress in Venezuela would look like Venezuelan people having more control over their government. Instead, it's Donald Trump who now claims that he has control over Venezuela's government. What Trump has laid out is a version of classic colonization, expressly designed to disenfranchise Venezuelans. And I want to reflect on that for a moment because it's something that people across the country have reacted to in a big way, because it's so violently against so many of our values. Colonization is deeply unpopular. Since the coup happened, polling has found that the U.S. public rather overwhelmingly opposes ongoing U.S. involvement in governing Venezuela. When asked who should choose the next Venezuelan leader, Venezuelans or the US government, 90% opposed the US installing a leader. So if this isn't about drugs, it's not about democracy, what is it about? Well, if you listen to Trump, he'll tell you straight up over and over, he's doing war for oil. He can't stop talking about getting the oil, about insisting that oil proceeds will make this whole misadventure profitable. And what he means by that is not just that this is a war for oil, but that this is a war for oil executives. Already today, Trump was saying that US taxpayers should front the money to rebuild Venezuelan oil infrastructure, all while oil companies keep the proceeds from the oil. In sum, Trump's plan is to institute a system of continued violent coercion against the Venezuelan government at US taxpayer expense in an attempt to shape policies there to benefit oil company interests. He's taking us back to 19th century colonialism, committing to kill and injure people indefinitely, all to bail out fossil fuel companies in an era of climate change and permanently disenfranchise people in Venezuela. Those are the stakes here. And with stakes this high, we can't let our values or our voices be silenced. Failing to condemn and check Trump's illegal actions now will only embolden him. We've seen it time and time again that when this administration gives us a glimpse at their plans, we need to take them seriously because they're going to try to carry them out. We can't allow these anti-democratic imperialist actions to continue. It's our job to do all we can to ensure this goes no further, and I urge you to take actions at the links and to be on the lookout for more. Thank you all so much for coming out.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for taking the time tonight and giving us some of your expertise and really helping those who are watching across the country give them a bit of an understanding about what's happening. So thank you so much for your time tonight. Continuing the conversation, we are joined by Brittany DeBarros, member and organizing director at About Face Veterans Against War. Brittany brings a powerful lived experience and perspective to this conversation as a former captain in the Army who spoke out publicly following her deployment to Afghanistan. She grew up in a military family in Texas, raised to believe deeply in service, justice, and the promise of this country. Inspired by her mother, a former Army officer, Brittany joined the Army through ROTC, determined to serve and support herself. As a young officer, she carried responsibility for lives of dozens of soldiers and experienced firsthand the realities and the costs of war. Those experiences shaped her lifelong commitment to accountability, justice, and peace, and we are so grateful to have her voice with us tonight. Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be with you all tonight in a moment where it feels very difficult to be composed. I'm hearing people speak eloquently and say really important things about the moment that we're in. And I want to be real with y'all that this is personal for me, and that's difficult. Like was mentioned, I joined the military because I believed in the kinds of things that we're hearing the Trump administration claim that U.S. military members are being sent to do right now, to fight for democracy, to benefit the people of another country, to help them, protect them from something that could harm them, to protect Americans from a threat. And it unfortunately is something I had to learn the hard way, that ultimately I found myself in the middle of a war that was doing nothing but spending American tax dollars as my own community struggled to survive and live at home, and harming Afghans who are still reeling and still trying to recover from the absolute devastation that our military left behind us. For me, it's disgusting to see any elected official continue to lie to the American public after decades of lies in a moment where Americans across the country are struggling to pay for groceries, don't have health care, are working multiple jobs, and are still struggling to afford rent, or just to put their kids in daycare. I am a person who believes in the values that we're told that we're fighting for. And it's horrifying to see those values weaponized to promote something that's disingenuous, right? And then we have a president who is openly claiming that this is for oil executives. What a slap in the face. And that puts American service members in a horrible position. I'm talking every day to active military members who are having to make a decision about whether to follow their conscience or whether to kind of keep going through the motions and doing jobs that they know are wrong, and in some cases outright illegal. And so in this moment, I just want to say that, as it's already been said, this doesn't help anyone. It's not good for the American public. It's not going to help Venezuelans. We've seen that over and over again in so many cases, that we're not buying the lies this time. And if you're someone who wants to take action, we have to rally to do something about it. And remember that we can't be demoralized in a moment, because that's what people who want to use these concepts disingenuously want from us. They want us to believe that we have no power, that there's nothing that we can do about this. But we have power. Tomorrow, many, many people will be refusing to buy gas in a one-day gas strike at the pumps to say, cut the fuel, that if this is for oil executives, that we're not going to help fund that. So that's something I'm going to be participating in, and so a simple thing that you can do. This weekend, there will be protests, but either way, we have to continue to call on our Congress members to do everything we can, every tactic. We can't leave anything on the table in order to fight for our elected officials to make sure that they stand up for the things that our communities actually need and what we really want. We owe it to each other. We owe it to the people who are in uniform, who are being asked to carry out yet another entire generation of endless wars and occupations against the will of the American people. It's the least we can do in this moment. And we owe it to the people in Venezuela, who are going to be the ones most impacted by unchecked military aggression. And that's the thing that motivates me. And I hope that that's the thing that you hold in your heart as you take action tomorrow, the next day, and in all the days to come.
Whew, thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your commitment to accountability and for being a leader in this moment. It is not easy to do that. So I want to just take this moment to say thank you, Brittany, for being a leader in this moment. Our next speaker tonight is someone who is no stranger to activism. Nalini Stapp is a progressive activist, grassroots organizer, and leading national voice on racial and economic justice. For over a decade, Stapp has worked to build a multiracial, economically just society through progressive electoral campaigns nationwide and abroad. As National Director of Strategy for Working Families Power, Stapp transforms grassroots energy into voter turnout by harnessing the strength of social movements into people power at the ballot box. And she is wonderful on Real Housewives of Everything. Please welcome to the chat, Nalini Stapp.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, MoveOn, all of the partners on this call as well. I won't be long, but thank you all, everyone, for joining tonight. Yes, I'm Nalini Stamp, and with Working Families Power. And truly, this kind of solidarity matters, and I feel it. So this is amazing. So let's be clear. What Trump, Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, and the rest of this filthy administration did in Venezuela is not about drugs, safety, or democracy. It's about greed. It's about benefiting billionaires and oil companies at our expense. For me, this is also personal. I was 14 years old when George Bush declared we would invade Iraq in my name. I grew up in New York City. September 11th was my fourth day of high school in Manhattan. And I remember what it felt like to watch a president use fear and lies to justify a war while people at home were suffering. And just like I did then, I reject this now. Not in my name, not when my family is struggling, and not when our communities are hurting. Trump sold out working class voters, every American. He said he was going to lower prices and make our lives better, but instead he's enriched himself and his cronies by billions through tax breaks, backroom deals, and rolling back regulations meant to keep us safe. And now he's committed all of us, the American people, to the cost of a military occupation in Venezuela. And who knows where else? I'm Caribbean. I am Puerto Rican and Belizean, and in Puerto Rico, they have been using this as a staging ground to reoccupy that island. And I am not going to sit back and watch our country destabilize Latin America again. We have seen this story before: intervention, occupation, regime change, and it never ends with freedom. It ends with trauma, displacement, violence, and families paying the price while corporations cash the checks. And it is wild because we are talking about freedom when this year we are supposed to be celebrating the 250th anniversary of our freedom fight to establish the United States. Yes, with a lot of stuff that was wrong in the beginning. But while millions of us are being kicked off of Medicaid right now, while working families struggle to cover the cost of rising health care, as Tupac Shakur said, they got money for wars, but they can't feed the poor. More military spending means fewer resources for the things we actually need: affordable healthcare, good public schools, and quality childcare. And if American boots on the ground in Venezuela and everywhere else, you already know it won't be Barron Trump and fatigues. It'll be us. It'll be our sons and our daughters risking our lives so Chevron and ExxonMobil can make even more money. But we have power. We're seeing it tonight, how we show up in our communities to protect each other from ICE kidnappings and killings, how we mobilize in the streets, how we come together in moments of crisis, and how we showed up at the polls last year to send a big, fat, get lost message to Trump and his cronies. So tonight, we're demanding Congress do its job and hold these criminals accountable. We are the many, we are the majority, and we will fight against the very few. And together we say, not in our name, not in our country. We can make America work for us all, but only through unity, collective action, and the courage to fight back. I'm proud to be with our, members of Congress, our partners who helped put this call together again. If you like what we do at Working Families Power and want to be a part of it, text "no warfare," all one word, to 70303. Oh my God, 70303. Again, text "no warfare" to 70303. And we'll connect you to your member of Congress right now. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nalini. Thank you. I've been working at MoveOn now for almost a decade, and for that whole decade, I have known Nalini and have seen the passion that we see tonight, and it touches me deeply. So I want to thank you so much, sis, for all the work that you do here and abroad. So honor to you, and thank you for everything that you do. So next, we have a special guest. Senator Tim Kaine has spent his life guided by service, fairness, and accountability. From his early work teaching in Honduras to years as a civil rights lawyer, governor of Virginia, and now U.S. Senator, he's consistently focused on making government work for everyday people. In the Senate, Senator Kaine serves on the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committees, where he's been a leading voice for congressional oversight, restraint in the use of military force, and a foreign policy that puts people first. He's also fought to expand access to affordable health care, lower costs for families, and protect democratic values at home and abroad. We are grateful for his leadership and his presence and his voice in this moment. Please join me in welcoming Senator Tim Kaine. Hello, Senator. How are you?
Hey, Chris, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Gotcha.
All right. Hey, listen, Chris, thank you for those kind words, and to MoveOn and others for doing this call. And I thank all the other panelists. I'll be quick. I've been in the Senate since 2013, and I often tell people I came into the Senate with 100 interests and 10 passions and one obsession. And the obsession was war powers. Coming into my public service career as a city councilman and mayor, and then lieutenant governor and governor as the global war on terror started, I became deeply convinced that we just get it wrong the way we decide about whether to send our sons and daughters into war. And this is personal for me. I'm not only a senator from Virginia that has an awful lot of military families and a member of the Armed Services Committee. My oldest child, and I just had dinner with him, is a United States Marine. And I just don't think we should ever send our sons and daughters into war without a vote of Congress. That was my obsession when I came into the Senate 13 years ago. I have been a voice, often a lonely voice. I remember standing up against my personal friend, President Barack Obama, as he thought about using the US military in Syria to punish Bashar al-Assad for using chemical weapons against his civilians. Assad deserved to be punished, but I told President Obama, you can't do this without a vote of Congress, because the founders of our country decided that war was too big a decision to be put in the hands of any individual. And remember, the founders drafting the Constitution in 1787, they had George Washington as the president. They loved and trusted the guy, but they thought war was even too big a decision for George Washington. It needed to be debated in view of the public, and only after a debate and vote with a validation that something was in the national mission should we send our sons and daughters into war. Here we are, Chris, and those on this call. We are 4 months into a military operation that has so far killed about 200, quote, enemies, as declared on President Trump's secret list of those who can be targeted, both on international waters and in the attack on Venezuela. U.S. troops have been deployed on assets all around Venezuela, and U.S. troops were injured in the operation this weekend. 2 are still in the hospital. But get this, the people's elected Congress, 4 months into this, has not had a single public hearing in the Armed Services Committee, in the Foreign Relations Committee, in the Judiciary Committee, in the Appropriations Committee, in the Intelligence Committee of either house, not a single public hearing. This is a war being waged in secret by the Trump administration. Anytime they brief us, they only brief us in classified settings, as they did this morning. And the leader, Senator Thune, stands up and says, what we are about to tell you is not for public consumption. If they felt so righteous about this, why are they hiding it? Why won't they show you the strike that killed struggling, shipwrecked sailors clinging to flotsam in the ocean? Why won't they share with you the legal rationale justifying the boat strikes and justifying the invasion of Venezuela? Why won't they share with you the shocking targeting criteria they use to decide who to strike? I know all of this because I've seen it in classified, but I'm not allowed to share it with you. And I'm not allowed to share it even with families in Virginia whose kids are deployed, who are asking me why, what's the rationale, for how long. It's time to get this out of the classified setting and before the American public. My effort to do this has been the filing of this War Powers Resolution, and we'll have a vote tomorrow morning. I'm expecting to get every Democratic vote. There's at least one that I think is still grappling with it, but I think I'll get every Democratic vote. I expect I'll get 2 Republican votes, Senators Paul and Murkowski, who have been voting with me on the proposition we shouldn't be at war without a vote of Congress. And I do know that there are other Republicans who are kind of grappling with this. I forced them to vote on this a couple months ago when we were amassing military assets around Venezuela, but many voted no, and they said President Trump's only bluffing. There's not going to be an invasion. This is just a bluffing tactic. Well, now we've not only invaded and deposed the president and arrested him and put his henchmen in power instead of the opposition leader who won an election by a 2-to-1 margin a year ago, but we've announced that we're seizing their oil and trying to manage the economy. This administration can't run the U.S. economy. Housing is up, food is up, healthcare is up, childcare is up, energy is up. We can't run the U.S. economy, and they're claiming that they're going to seize Venezuelan oil and run the Venezuelan economy. So I'm making the case to my colleagues, and anything you can do in reaching out to House members or senators, and just say this: if you vote that Donald Trump doesn't have to come to Congress to wage war on Venezuela or any other nation, you're voting for your own irrelevance. And you may look in the mirror one day, just like so many looked in the mirror after their votes on Iraq years later and regretted it. You may look in the mirror one day and deeply regret this vote. But if you vote that we shouldn't be at war without a vote of Congress, that is a vote you will never regret. You will never regret voting for your own relevance. You will never regret voting that this president or any president should have to come to you to justify to you and the nation why a war is in the national interest. The vote that I'm putting before the Senate tomorrow is a vote that anyone voting with me will have no doubt that they will ever regret that. So many people who've cast war votes have come to regret them later. I'm asking my colleagues to cast a vote that they'll never regret, that the nation shouldn't be at war, and we shouldn't send our sons and daughters into war without a vote of Congress. And having Chris, you and MoveOn and others with us for this super important principle means a lot. I will say this: there's going to be more of these votes because the president has talked about Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, Greenland. The president used the US military against Nigeria, within Nigeria, without congressional authorization during the Christmas holidays. I'm going to force the Senate to vote on all of these and to vote, are you relevant? Do you care? Do you want to be consulted, or do you want to just give the president a green light and a blank check? And having your help means a lot. So thanks so much for having me on tonight.
Thank you so much, Senator Kaine, for not just your steady leadership and moral clarity, but also your decades-long commitment to service and diplomacy, and truly, even the historical context you gave today was so eye-opening. So thank you so much for grounding us and letting people know what's at stake, and letting people know what you're doing even now. And we are really heartened by that. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, Senator Kaine. So much energy and power to you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks to everyone. So much. Appreciate it, Chris.
Yes, sir. Our final speaker tonight is no stranger to standing up against war. I am so pleased to introduce to you and to welcome to you MoveOn's Chief of Program, Sada Hagdusti. Good evening, Sada.
Hi, everyone. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Higdusti. I am the Chief of Program here at MoveOn, and I am so excited to be here with you today. I just want to reiterate again, we are at a flashpoint here. And I know that when it comes to issues like this and moments like this, when the fear and pain is so real, it can feel like we might not be able to create change. And we just had a senator on this call that told us we do have power. The Senate is going to vote this week. It is really exciting to see the way Senator Tim Kaine laid this out. We have Democrats who are holding together, but need reinforcement, need to know that when they are showing up for us, we hear them and we see them. And there are Republicans who are considering this because we know that even though this country disagrees on a lot, the one thing we all share is that we know that we don't want more forever wars. We want to see money being spent on healthcare. We want to ensure that our groceries are affordable, that people can live lives with dignity, as opposed to driving these kinds of reckless actions that wreak havoc across the world and fundamentally make us all less safe as well. And here's the thing. If you are talking to others and they are asking you, what will happen if we don't act? The answer is this will get worse. Again, the senator just told us that a few months ago, no one thought that this what is happening now would happen. They thought it was a bluff. So we cannot assume that Trump is bluffing when he is talking about doing this in Nicaragua, in Cuba, in Iran, and in Greenland as well. It is up to us to push back like we have so many times before when it came to the war in Iraq, when it came to stopping a war with Iran, to do what we have done and show the strength of our power. And here's the thing, momentum is on our side. This weekend, MoveOn launched a petition for that was clear that we do not want an occupation in Venezuela. Within the first 24 hours, we had 50,000 people sign on, and right now it is over 100,000 people strong. And we know it will grow every single day because as this continues, people are going to get more and more outraged as they keep getting kicked off their healthcare, as they can't afford groceries, watching our troops, watching them being put at risk needlessly while all of this is happening. It is something that is outrageous, and others will continue joining us. And here's the other thing. We know that this Friday, oil executives are going to DC to talk about the future of Venezuela. Trump just tweeted that he wants a $1.5 trillion military budget. And let me remind you all, the Pentagon is the only department that has never once passed an audit. That doesn't even mean that they are not corrupt. It just means that they don't even really know where their money is. But Trump wants to give them more money while taking away real things that people in our communities rely on day in and day out. So that's why today we're asking you to do three very critical things. One, fill out a form from Indivisible at indivisi.org/no war to get everything you need to call your senators before they're making this vote. Second, use MoveOn's letter tool to send a quick note to members of Congress, moveon.org/no war letter. And if you've already done both of that, talk to three friends. Get them to take action on this with you. And if they say, but why? Let them know that oil executives and other corporate war profiteers are pounding the pavement in Congress right now, saying that Congress doesn't need to worry about this because people like us don't care about foreign policy. With each petition signature, with each phone call, we are going to prove them wrong. And just like members of Congress regretted their war in Iraq, a huge part of that was because people like us did not let them forget that vote, and we will be doing that again. So please do ensure we are building this movement because we need as visible and as public a pushback right now to not only ensure Trump is reined in, but that this does not get worse. And to finish up, I also want to just say, I grew up in Australia and I was really lucky to be able to interact with a lot of Indigenous culture there. And in moments like this, I always think about the words of the Indigenous elder Leela Watson, who said, "If you came here to save me, you are wasting your time. But if you are here because your liberation is bound up on mine, then we can work together." For everyone who has family in Venezuela, and for folks who has had family and connections where people have risked so much to fight for democracy, to fight for their rights, I want to say, I know your liberation is bound up in mine. And we will not forget the effort and that hardship. And we are here and we are in this fight together to ensure that Venezuela is governed by Venezuelans and not a strongman. My liberation as someone who's from Iran is also bound up with the liberation of protesters in Iran who are right now going through such tremendous hardship. And again, There are so many people in this country and around the world who are every day pushing for freedom and pushing for our rights. And it is in that where we will forge our freedom and not in the actions of interventions by authoritarians. And I also want to say our liberation tonight, especially, is bound up in justice being delivered in Minnesota after ICE murdered a woman there tonight. This type of militarism fundamentally makes us all less safe. When Trump is emboldened to respond with violence around the world, that violence also escalates here, and we are seeing that. Strong men promise us freedom while only delivering wealth and opportunities for their cronies. Movements like this one is where the rights we have always been forged. Movements like this one, when working people are connected together, is where our safety comes from. So today, I am so grateful for the work of all of those who have pushed for peace in the past, for the work that people like you are doing today, and the future that we are building, where the default is diplomacy, and when the default is people working together to ensure that we all have freedom, we all have dignity, and we can all live and thrive without this constant fear of violence. Thank you all so much for your time and for all of your actions.